Hello everyone, welcome back to Iron Shield Media. Today we're diving into a story that's both harrowing and extraordinary. How Ukraine's resistance is quietly, persistently breaking the Russian front line. You'll want to stick around because we'll cover exterior forces, interior dynamics, performance on the ground, safety features of tactics, the unique selling points of this resistance effort, costs, not in the commercial sense, but in terms of sacrifice and strategic investment, and then wrap up with a strong conclusion. Starting with the exterior, from the outside, what we're witnessing is a clash of heavy machinery, entrenched lines, vast fields, supply routes, drones, artillery, and the kind of terrain that shapes how wars are fought. Russia came into this war counting on superior numbers, heavy armor, and deep logistical lines, but that exterior facade has started to crack. Analysts note that Russian forces have failed to achieve sweeping advances. For example, in large parts of the Eastern Front, the rate of advance has been measured in mere tens of meters per day, dramatically slow for a modern offensive. CSS Pli 1 on the Ukrainian side, the exterior picture is of agile units, drones overhead, and a nation mobilized in many ways with weapons, training, but importantly with the mindset that the status quo cannot hold. The exterior also involves supply lines. Russia has built extensive logistics networks, but Ukrainian partisans and special forces are targeting railways, bridges, depots, creating problems for that exterior network of the invader. Wikipedia, Floss 1. So from the outside, you see towering tanks, missile firestorms, massive infrastructure, but you also see cracks forming in those structures, the seams where the resistance is pushing. Now, turning to the interior, meaning the deeper dynamics of what's happening within these operations, the morale, the command decisions, intelligence, logistics, adaptation. Inside Ukraine's forces, you see a growing willingness to innovate, small units supported by drones, robots, guerrilla-style tactics, even in major engagements. For example, in one Ukrainian counterattack, a platoon-sized unit supported by drones and tanks recaptured ground with no Ukrainian casualties, while inflicting heavy losses on the Russian side. The Guardian, you see also the interior life of the troops, the training, the cohesion, the drive. On the Russian side, you see signs of strain, high casualties, slow progress, morale problems. CSIS, so the interior is more than just the big pictures. It's about the people, the adaptation, the information flows, the ability to challenge what seemed fixed. Performance. How is the resistance performing? The evidence is clear that although Ukraine is still under tremendous pressure, it is performing better than many expected. The Russian war machine, despite its size, has achieved only modest territorial gains in recent periods, lost large quantities of equipment, and been slowed significantly. CSS Pli 1 for Ukraine, performance is shown not just in territory regained, but in how resources are leveraged, how technology is used, especially drones and intelligence, how small units are empowered. One key performance highlight, the Russian advance near certain critical sectors was halted or reversed through Ukrainian countermeasures. The Guardian, so the resistance is delivering performance that's meaningful, slowing the enemy, reclaiming terrain, keeping supply chains of the adversary under pressure. Safety features, in this context, means how are Ukrainian forces managing risk, protecting their troops, adjusting tactics to minimize their vulnerabilities and exploit the vulnerabilities of the adversary. One striking example, the use of protective gear, tactics of defense, in depth, choosing terrain advantages, but also, very importantly, avoiding brute force frontal assaults when possible, and instead leveraging mobility, surprise, and intelligence. The slower, attritional model of the Russians meant they exposed themselves to losses. The Ukrainian side appears increasingly effective at mitigating its own risks while amplifying the adversaries. For example, when operations are designed so that the enemy's armor and logistics become weak links, you reduce your casualties while maximizing your effect. This is a safety feature strategy of the resistance. Fight hard, but fight smart, not just by sheer numbers. The interior dynamic of protecting the force is also about morale and avoiding vulnerable exposure, something seen more and more in the Ukrainian approach. Unique selling points. What sets this resistance apart and why is it turning heads? First, innovation. Ukraine has adopted drones, partisans, intelligence networks, decentralized tactics and more flexible command structures in a war that many expected to be dominated by massed armor and siege warfare. Second, motivation and morale. The motivation of defending one's homeland, of fighting for survival rather than invasion, gives Ukrainian forces an intangible but powerful edge. Third, adaptation. Where the Russian side had large conventional forces but proved slow and rigid, the Ukrainian side has shown a capacity to adapt, to shift between defense and offense, to exploit the enemy's mistakes, to strike logistics and supply chains. Fourth, international support. The resistance is bolstered by external aid, training, intelligence sharing, and technology transfers which give it capabilities the Russians may not expect. Fifth, the strategic undermining of the adversary. The resistance isn't just holding ground, it's making the enemy pay in casualties and logistical breakdowns in time. For example, one piece of analysis estimated that Russia had lost more than 5 times as many casualties in this conflict over a multi-year period than any Soviet-Russian war since W1. CSS, these unique selling points make the story compelling and important. Price. Now, we're not talking of a retail product, but in war, the price is the tall human lives, equipment, territory, economic disruption, psychological stress. Ukraine's resistance is paying a very high price. While they have impressive successes, the losses are real. Russian fire, mines, artillery, drone strikes pose lethal risks. Analysts have pointed out that minefields laid by the Russians are enormously harmful to Ukraine's advance. Financial Times, the price in terms of casualties, equipment loss, and civilian suffering is high, but relative to the alternative, conceding ground, losing sovereignty, allowing the enemy to dictate terms, many assess that the price is worth bearing. For Russia, too, the price is astronomical, slow advances, huge equipment losses, massive casualties. That large price tag is part of why the resistance is making strategic sense. You force the oppressor to pay more than they can sustain. Conclusion. So what do we take away? The story of Ukraine's resistance breaking the Russian front line is far from over. The conflict is ongoing, the stakes remain enormous, and there are no easy answers. But what we are seeing is a shift. The shift is not yet a full collapse of the Russian effort, but a real challenge to its momentum. What began as a conventional war of massed armored thrusts has evolved into a dynamic, multi-domain struggle where intelligence, drones, logistics, morale, innovation matter just as much as tanks and bombs. Ukraine's resistance is grabbing the advantage not by being bigger, but by being smarter, tougher, more adaptive. For anyone watching this conflict, the message is clear: front lines are not static, they are fragile. The invader's exterior might look imposing, but if the interior cracks, if morale falters, if logistics fail and innovation prevails, then that fat aid can crumble. Ukraine's resistance is showing that, and in doing so is rewriting parts of how modern war is fought. Thank you for watching Iron Shield Media. If you found this breakdown helpful, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into critical global events. Until next time, stay informed, stay vigilant.